Have a quorum present, so I will call a meeting to order. Back up here, I will ask the clerk to take our roll call.
Carroll.
Here.
Brewer. Glassburner.
Here.
Turk.
Here.
Frank. And Williamson. Here. You have 4 present. You have 1.
Very good. And are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the meeting was properly noticed in the lock cabinet that's down in the first floor recordings.
Ah.
There, it is there.
And posted in the county clerk's office window as well.
Yes. Yes. Already locked cabinet?
Yes.
Well, we had it before.
Oh, I
We were
didn't know
just
that.
waiting on a lock, but then we
Oh.
had agenda gate. So,
Speaking of agendas, we have a 12-point agenda before us. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Glassbrenner, second by Carroll. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We also have minutes from our October 22nd meeting. Any comments, questions, corrections on those minutes that were shared with us?
Comment.
Mr. Carroll.
I was impressed with how detailed they were.
where you go, Derek?
That'd be
They have
very,
a lot of notes on there.
High five.
yeah,
Awesome.
plenty of time for that, but
Be a little while.
All right. Hearing no corrections, I will declare the minutes to be approved as presented in detail. Thank you. Public comment, item 6. Any member of the public wish to address this committee? I don't have anybody here in the room. Anybody online, a member of the public that would like to address the committee? All right, hearing none, we will move on to item 7, update on inventory of campus items and associated costs.
Okay, so Josh did an outstanding job of kind of fast forwarding this and working with SEH to come up with a proposal for us. We did have a meeting. Josh, myself, and Randy were on with a team from SEH talking through what it would potentially look like, how we would engage with them. And so we did receive a proposal. And so it would be a couple of different teams that would come in. They would inventory fixtures, furnishings, and equipment occupying 6 buildings. And we talked about the order in which it would seem appropriate. And because the largest volume of stuff seems to be in the science building, we kind of thought start there, head to the classroom building, move to the library, then to the student center, then Melville Hall, and then the Roadrunner gym. They would then provide us with a spreadsheet categorizing all of the assets into categories. They would do photo documentation. They would put them into lots and number the components. And then any sellable items, they would report on anything that was junk or had no real value. They would let us know that so that we could dispose of it. And the plan for them was to do each building 1 by 1. You couldn't do it all at the same time. So you would have to do 1 building, hold the auction, complete that, then the next building, hold the auction, complete that. So it would take quite a bit of time. So then they would do the inventory list, they would share it with the county, the consultation team would develop the auction documents, the spreadsheets, the photos, all of that. And then it would go on Wisconsin surplus. Then they were saying, first building could be done late winter, early spring 2025, and then the county would manage that. The total cost, as they are estimating at this point, is about $154,500, and that has the disclaimer of we reserve the right to adjust the fee accordingly once we have been engaged in the assignment and can witness firsthand the amount of fixture, furnishings, and equipment that will need to be inventoried, categorized, and posted on the online auction site. Oh, and I should have said not to exceed $154,500. Now, during this meeting, they also sent me links to Wisconsin surplus with similar items comparative to what we might have at the campus. And what became very apparent very quickly is that it will cost us more to inventory the items than what we will most likely make on auction. Ovens were selling for $20. old worn out desks and chairs and beakers and things like that are probably not going to fetch a large amount, especially on Wisconsin surplus. Some similar items had no bids at all. And so, after that call, I spoke further with Josh, I talked with Randy, I've talked to a few other people, and my recommendation or my suggestion, and take this for what it's worth, is I do think we would be better off going with some sort of local auction company that would come in. They would inventory as they go because they sell it in lots. And then they would take a percentage of whatever the sales are. That would give us an opportunity to get rid of what we know is junk and then just get rid of the others. I did also ask about like the hoods and in the science building, that very specific equipment, the islands and the chemistry labs and those sorts of things. Wisconsin surplus or these type of auction houses will not auction something that is still attached. So that would mean hiring a separate consultant to come in and remove items. There are specialty consultants that you can hire to do those things, but again, those hoods and those specialty items are, 20 years old. They're not new. What would they fetch? So again, it may be in our best interest to then do something more local and then arrange if there's a school that wants them or something like that, we could auction off. So it's much more complex than just having them come in, do an inventory and simply auction it off. And the cost seems very prohibitive for what we can anticipate getting in revenues. That's just.
Have any of you ever gone on Wisconsin surplus?
Oh, when did you have the meeting with them?
About a week and a half ago.
Can I see sorry, I'm just really visual. Can I see that?
Yeah.
Because they have so much municipalities from all over the state going on. They have so much of this stuff that
The volume.
that's why they won't really get bids. But I did talk to Mr. Wilkinson from Wilkinson Auction, because I need to talk to him about our Board of Adjustments tomorrow. And they are right on Muscatine. He said, yeah, we could look into it, I said, I wouldn't hold you to any percentages until you looked at it, but he said, it just depends on what we have to do. If we just have to put numbers on them and put them online, because they've gone to more and more online auctions for,
They all have,
yeah, it's just people,
ever since COVID.
yep, so.
It would seem like we're looking at a large volume of low-cost items. So that, the prospect of generating significant revenue is pretty low. The prospect of engaging someone who would come in and do it for us is gonna generate cost more than revenue. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, is that way, if you bring an auction house in that's local, number one, your bidders are going to be more local. And we already know, we have heard from schools and community groups that they are interested in these items. And again, this would be a way to ensure that everyone has fair access to those items. And that doesn't mean those costs are going to be significant. They're not, and so I could see that satisfying that piece. And as Steve said, in talking to Josh, oftentimes it's, 10, 15, 20% of sales. So if you don't make a lot, you don't pay a lot. It's really based on those sorts of things as well.
I would imagine it could be possible they might adjust their percentage up if they look at everything and say, boy, this isn't gonna go for much.
Yeah, I don't know. Until we had them actually walk through, I don't know.
Mr. Carroll.
Two questions. First, do we know if there's any unique or high value items that should be handled differently? And second, we do all these auctions, kind of like a farm auction, and everything that wants to be bought is bought. What do we do with what's left over?
We get rid of it.
Okay,
Yeah, we just dispose of it.
Well, if it's scrap metal.
Right.
yeah.
There's, and there are options. There's a lot of technology stuff out there, that, I was very briefly out there with Barb when we were working on the, reprogramming the fobs, and there was a, small computer lab kind of right across. And I said, are these worth anything? And there's a lot of monitors and keyboards but they're all, again, older. So those may not be worth much, but is there some place that might want a bunch of extra keyboards just to have like a school I don't know. So it's hard to tell. As far as high dollar, high volume, we do have kitchen equipment, and one of the things I wanted to do was speak with Angie out at Pine Valley just to see if there's anything out there that they could utilize out of the industrial kitchen or would maybe want or have as a backup, things like that. But we have a few grand pianos. They're not new. They're rough, a couple. There are two and then one smaller in the piano room. Going up the stairs, there's a voice lesson room. There's one small piano there. And then when you go into kind of the choir room, the music room area, there's one there that is like a practice piano. There's a small room that does have some instruments and different things in there. Other than that, there are plotters, there are some microscopes, there are some things that I think could potentially be higher dollar, but I just don't.
It doesn't sound like it. I mean, piano, every once in a while, you'll see online someone willing to give away a piano.
Right.
Just,
So,
They don't want to move it or tune it or.
yeah, so it doesn't sound like it.
And you said, I'm trying to remember what you said with Platteville, did they dispose of all the chemicals in the science building?
yes,
Okay.
so we had asked them to dispose of it, and it appears to me, I can't say that they're all gone, and there are still jars of, reserved animals.
Well, that's not a big deal, but the chemicals can get really
and
costly.
I know-
for the-
Right, and I did also, there was a large room over outside, in the gym area, outside of kind of the shop that had a bunch of paint and stuff like that, and we had asked them to clean that out, and that is pretty much cleaned out as well. So I don't, we may find something here or there, but the large volume is gone, yes.
Great. We need to make a decision then?
Well, would a next step be to have somebody local come in and just look at
I
it?
think so. I think that's probably not a bad idea.
Probably don't need a committee action on that, just
Yep, okay, I'll reach out to.
Wilkinson. I don't know if there's anybody else local.
If
that-
they give you something like this, can we have it in our folder the next time to look at?
Good.
Thank you. All right.
Anything else on the inventory prospects? Obviously, we're still looking to see what might be used for our own purposes too.
Yes.
as we go.
And we really haven't opened that up yet. I mean, we're working on the onesies and twosies and things.
Yeah.
But I want to get MIS out there, to look at the technology pieces and
And
things.
you've said a lot of the desks aren't in the best of shape and stuff like that.
Yeah, there are, we found enough that we think we can satisfy everyone's ask as far as desks and chairs. And that's not to say that we're keeping all of the desks whole, but thankfully they kind of can be pieced together. So we think we can kind of piece together enough to make sure that everyone has a newer or a better workspace than what they have now. I don't think that'll leave a lot left over as far as the really newer, more usable things. There are a ton of rolling desk chairs, but again, they're not new. So we're keeping our eyes peeled. Oh, I know Steve had mentioned the airport needs a new table because the committee got bigger. I think there's one out there that would potentially work for the airport. So that's not a bad thing, and we can send some of those chairs over there. So yeah, we're trying to piece together where we think things would make sense.
Okay, very good. Any other questions on that? Right, then we'll move on to item 8 on the agenda, discussion and possible action. This will be on winterization of campus buildings. And we have guests online to share expertise with us.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to, for everyone, both in the boardroom and participating online, just make some quick introductions for our team. Myself, again, speaking is Kyle Knope. Vice President and Senior Project Manager with Venture Architects. Also on the call with me is Principal with Venture Architects, Corey Beyer. We also have our Senior Designer, Brian Nelson. With Venture Architects, Brian was integral. Brian and Corey were integral in both the space needs analysis assessment, meeting with a lot of the users, and really working into the master planning process. If any of those, we know, I recognize from our discussion at the last meeting that we had some potential discussion points relative to space needs analysis. Knowing that that is not the specific part of this agenda item, but if something does come up, we have those resources here to address that. Also on the meeting, we have R.D. Ruffin and Kirk Stash, both with Ring and Du Chateau Consulting Engineers. Both Kirk and R.D. were part of the facility assessment portion of the process when we were on site collecting information with all of the assets and all of the buildings, and integral in creating a lot of the input that has been generated so far to provide that information to Richland County. The big part of this discussion will we think will be kind of based in their court, recognizing that we're talking about winterization, and we have those experts online here for those questions, and they can address that. I think one first thing we can do here, I will just begin to just share. If I click share my screen, I actually have to share it. There's that second click I always miss. I apologize. Okay, so just can everybody see the screen with the site plan for the UW Richland campus?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I think before we really get into anything, we can do a quick previously at the campus reconfiguration committee meeting campus update refresher episode update. We can say we talked about in October the physical assessment of the buildings on campus, identifying the A building being the science building. This is a bit of an older plan. There is an addition on there. There's the Arts and Education building, which is considered building B, the Copper Top, which is the theater and cafeteria student center, that's building E here. Those are on the east side of the campus. Then as we start moving west, to the northwest, we have building C, which is the library, building D, which is Melville Hall, that also has the addition on it, and then building F is the gymnasium. As part of that discussion last month, one of the pieces that our team had conveyed to the committee was that due to the specialty nature of the physical building and infrastructure of building A, the science building, and building E, the theater and student center, those really are so highly specific and specialized that reuse of those two buildings is extremely difficult, and that future considerations really need to be driven towards a more focused application that are aligned with those buildings. Building B, the Arts and Education building, the infrastructure, the structural system of that building, and the overall condition of that building is such that we would not recommend really any reuse of that building. So that was part of that discussion. That really left building C, the library, building D, Melville Hall, and building F, the gymnasium, as part of our discussion. For today, that really focuses on, okay, what do we do now with winter coming up, and what considerations do we need to make as a county and as a team for winterizing these buildings if that is the approach we want to go with. That is where we're at. I would like to open it up to the committee with any direct questions that you may have of our team that we can address right away and use that as sort of the start for further discussion with a lot of these buildings. So any questions by the committee?
I think you described the point we're at pretty accurately. Okay, winter's going to be here very soon. What do we do? We have only one building that we're actively utilizing any of right now. We certainly don't wish to, write off or damage other buildings, unintentionally, but looking at, all right, it's costing a small fortune to heat and air condition all these buildings that are standing vacant. What would our realistic options be to have some degree of preserving the condition of the building, but minimizing the ongoing cost of it, unless as a committee, we decided, there are some buildings we don't even want to mess with. I think that's, other committee members, feel free to jump in here.
My exact thoughts.
Okay. Then with that, I think maybe what would be beneficial is to have our engineers on the team speak a little bit more about the systems and the process of winterization and how that would affect these buildings and how they would see that in terms of the future use of those buildings moving forward in the following calendar year. So with that, I think I'll let RD talk to some of the, we've talked about this since our last meeting, had some conversations, and I'll let RD sort of summarize some of those discussions relative to winterization. So go ahead, RD.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. And let's just start with the buildings that you don't plan on utilizing further, which is again that A, B, and E buildings. If the goal is to minimize impact as far as, you don't want to damage the buildings or anything like that, there are several things that can be done that can help that. And I'm speaking specifically to the plumbing side of things. And Kirk would address the HVAC side. But as far as the plumbing side goes, obviously it's shutting down the water, making sure that the main valves to the buildings are turned off. And then really it's draining the systems out to make sure that there isn't any water in the piping, because if the buildings freeze, you don't want that pipe, that freeze thaw with the water, because that'll damage the infrastructure. Again, these buildings aren't something that you're planning to reuse, but we want to minimize the impact as much as possible. So again, that would be, draining down the water heater, things like that. You could even go to the step of taking fixtures off the wall and then plugging the sanitary pipe to prevent any sewer gas from coming up. Things like that, filling traps with peanut oil or even putting a stopper in them to prevent, again, that sewer gas from coming back up in the building. And though that's specifically, again, for buildings, so you're just going to let go dormant and just let them go with the temperature. Kirk, I don't know if you want to talk about that from your side on the HVAC.
You bet. Excuse me. From an HVAC perspective, these three buildings that we're talking about, A, B, and E, one of the buildings is relatively easy to basically mothball it. That's building B, the Arts and Education building. And that building, do you have a key to box open?
I do.
As well, Kyle?
Yes.
Let's pull that up and bring up the assets real quick. Mechanical assets, if you wouldn't mind.
And it'll be 1 second here.
You bet.
Gentlemen, as you guys are finding what you're looking for, did you identify areas where we can access the blowout lines? Did you identify where the water shutoffs are? Just curious if you had went to that extreme.
Actually, in the Akita box, yes, where the water entrances are in each of the buildings, we tried to locate those, get photos of those. That would be the best place to try and blow out all the lines, because obviously that's where the water's coming into the building. So that would be the ideal spot. Again, you can do it the opposite way and start and open up a valve on the entrance and blow it backwards. Again, you just have to disconnect the pipe and then get the water back through. But yes, those should be identified on the plans, so you can easily find those, hopefully. And if there are questions on process or anything like that, we can certainly help with that type of thing as well.
Thank you.
Kyle, I was just thinking if you could bring up the list view, but honestly,
Yep,
keep it simple.
I
Sorry.
certainly can. Okay. Thought I can.
While he's bringing that up, at the end of the day, we've got two buildings that have a hot water boiler system in them. That's the science building and the cafeteria/theater building. What we do with those systems, quite honestly, is going to be based upon how far you want to mothball it. If you really are trying or are going to allow it to get to whatever ambient temperature it is outside on these hot water systems, we would want to fully drain the entire system so that you don't end up with a cracked pipe and you don't end up with a situation where the system tries to refill itself. If we're just trying to keep it at a temperature that's, I'll arbitrarily pick 50 degrees, something that is above freezing by a safe margin, and that safe margin is likely 10 degrees, then all it is changing set points and for the pneumatic thermostats in the building so that the building just maintains that lower temperature set point, protects your fire protection systems and your HVAC and plumbing systems from that perspective. So in the arts and education building, you can see in that building, we have literally just got furnaces with condensing units for cooling. So in those buildings, honestly, it can be as simple as turning the systems off and then shutting off the gas service to the building. And I would go to that extent just from the standpoint then you are sure that gas doesn't flow anywhere and that the shutoff valves at the individual pieces of equipment are actually holding and stopping gas from flowing. From that perspective, this building, the arts and education building, is easy to mothball. And the gymnasium, I'm sorry, not gymnasium. These science and cafeteria buildings are more of a challenge and require more effort in order to mothball those. Do you guys have questions on any of that?
A couple of questions. One of them, how would the picture look for building C, the library building?
So the library building, that has got furnaces in it. So from that perspective, that building is pretty easy as well. How far are you thinking that you're going to want to just let it go to ambient outside temperature? Or are you thinking that just a lower set point than what's normally kept in the buildings?
Well, I would say those are the two options we're looking at. I don't know that we picked one yet.
Okay.
That's why we have the experts online that want to tell us what is the best option.
We know from previous information that that building would require significant work if it were going to be reused because we couldn't put in code-compliant bathrooms within the current perimeter and stuff like that, so.
Yes. So if we're just trying to keep this building operational at that point, or then I would I would suggest that we just look to keep it at a lower temperature set point, and then it's just going around to the few furnaces in the building and setting that lower set point. Once again, if we're trying to fully shut the building down, the safest bet would be to go ahead and shut off the gas service to the building. That way all of the furnaces don't get natural gas provided to them, and there's no worry from that perspective. So mechanically, for the library building, it is easier.
So just to comment on your question of whether to take the buildings all the way down to let them be ambient temperature outside and fluctuate with whatever winter brings, or to keep them at a at least we'll call above freezing level. And Kirk, I certainly want you to weigh in on this as well, but in my opinion, if you want to have any potential for any of the buildings, I would keep them above freezing. The reason I say that is, again, even if you drain down and blow out and all of that and try and get all the water out of the systems, there is the potential that water could be trapped somewhere. You could potentially have a pipe that would crack. And then if you did want to bring it back up and kind of restart the buildings, so to speak, there is the potential that there might be a catastrophic failure somewhere. If the thought is that we're not going to do anything with these buildings, it doesn't matter if they get damaged during winter. Obviously, you do the best you can to get out all of those, the water and everything out, and prepare for a complete shutdown of the building. And then it is what it is. If something happens, obviously it's shut down. So if there is any damage, it would be minimized. So we can certainly appreciate and provide guidance on that. But again, I think the final decision is up to you guys as to what your plan is moving forward, and how far do you want to take it down. And Kirk, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, or Corey or Kyle. This is kind of a broader discussion than just the mechanical system.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in and put on my residential, no, it would be recreational plumbing hat, maybe, just from a winterizing of a cottage type of thing. And this is something that our team kind of talked about. It's like when you blow all the lines out and all of that, you can get as much of the water out as possible. And RD kind of had alluded to it there. As much as you do all of that work and believe it's there, all of that plumbing infrastructure that is in that building that may not have any water in it, it is now going through a number of freeze thaw cycles, and you're getting expansion and contraction in those pipes that it never had done before. So just knowing out of experience, you get those gate valves that just are a little weepy here and there that you got to just go by and, a wrench and just tighten up here and there. Sometimes, now with this being a lot of it galvanized pipe, not as much, but just sweated connections, that freeze thaw, all of a sudden you just get a little pop in the solder, and you get a little drip that comes out of that. And the full on winterization and the full like take it below or turn off the furnace, turn off the gas type of operation, that will expose that infrastructure to that, where doing the low set point is a little bit more of an easier place to go. And as RD was talking about that, it made me think about agenda item number 7, with this inventorying of the campus items, and knowing that there's, like, oddly enough, the bulk of the items on the campus are really in those buildings on the east side. Building A, the science building, that thing is chock full of items that is going to need a lot of inventorying, as is building E. And if we're talking about doing that inventorying, or at least with SEH's proposal, with that being one building at a time, and potentially a month to do that, or even a couple of weeks, we're going to be already into that state of a freezing state, or at least a freezing condition overnight. And whether that be SEH, whether that be as the committee was discussing, an auctioneer coming through and doing an inventory of that, I think completely winterizing those buildings may actually be detrimental to the items that are in there, especially if you're having people going into inventory that. It may be the decision on item 7 may have informed the decision or guided the decision for item 8 on the winterization, which is maybe this first winter everything is put down to that low set point, and that way people can go in, inventory can be happening. It's a little chilly in there, but it at least protects everything that's in there that may still have some value to the county.
Mr. Carroll.
I was wondering if at this point, maybe we could talk about the utility costs a little bit, and maybe review that quickly, and then see what our ability is to throttle it back like they're describing, how much that might save.
Well, so one of the questions I have, just before we dive into that, is in the science building, that boiler system is a Honeywell system. And the computer system that it runs off of, the program, we actually brought a company that the school district uses out to try to fix it. And we're unable to do that, and honestly couldn't find anyone that had the expertise to fix that boiler system. And so I do believe Randy was having to go out there and manually set it. And there were times where it just kept going and kept getting hotter and hotter and hotter because we couldn't get the temperature regulated. And so I don't know what the potential cost would be to figure out how we do that, or if we can even find anyone, because the experts that we were told to call didn't have the skill set because it was so old that they didn't know how to repair it. And so we have some potential challenges with, the science building for sure. And I don't know if you have any insights on that, but.
RD, or actually that's probably more on the Kirk side of it with the Honeywell system and the boilers and that. What were your observations with that, and what is your experience with the Honeywell BAS system?
So overall, the HVAC equipment in that building is the newest that's on campus and in the best condition. Honeywell isn't used a lot for control systems for commercial buildings lately, at least not in this area. So I can completely understand having run into a problem getting somebody to service that. And you hit on something whereby you can have really good equipment, and if the control system is difficult or challenging to work with, that nice HVAC equipment isn't going to do you any good because you can't find anybody to do simple repairs that generally wouldn't be a big deal. So for buildings like that, you may, I'm trying to think about cafeteria building, if that was, I believe that was pneumatically controlled. Yeah. So to your point, you would end up likely needing to do some replacements of parts in order to get that functionality back so that you could get enough control of the building to do an adequate setback. I hadn't known that there was a problem, and that there was service that needed to occur with that building in particular. So I can appreciate where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, it's just the programming piece, you know, and yeah, Randy was doing some sort of manual setting and override and all sorts of stuff because it's just the computer component, the control system. And
Yeah.
I can't remember, and Randy is on vacation right now, so I couldn't ask him, but I couldn't remember exactly what they said, but basically they just said, we don't know anybody who would be able to work on this. So, I mean, if you have some suggestions of anyone that I could maybe reach out to get them to come and take a look so we can figure out maybe what, because everybody that we've tried to call, we've struck out. And I've called 3 or 4 people.
Okay.
So I would appreciate that.
Let me dig into that one a little bit more. I don't have somebody off the top of my head that just stands out as somebody who'd be able to help, but you got an office full of people as well. Let me do some talking internally and see if we can come up with a couple of suggestions that way.
I mean, is there another option without spending a huge amount of money to work around it or put something else in that's simpler, and or is this really too complex for something like that?
I'd need to talk to Randy to get a better sense of what happened,
Okay.
to be able to answer that question effectively.
Okay.
That's something we'll have to figure out because we can't even put it in a hold status right now with a non-functioning controller, so.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know, Kirk, if there is and maybe that's where, if we could talk to I know it's an old boiler, but if we could talk to the manufacturer or maybe the rep, and ask them if there's a way to set it, manually at the boiler, not using the controls, but if there's a way to valve it so that it could just, maintain a certain level of function. But yeah, we can look into that.
And I don't think it's as complicated as a boiler itself. If memory serves me right, that building has Honeywell controls. So the overriding controller that's changing all of the setbacks that you'd have for the various times a year and allow the boilers to provide a cooler temperature in the summer rather than in the winter. And as the temperature outside gets colder and colder, the temperature on the boilers increases. That's where I think the potential hiccup is. But yeah, let me talk internally, and I'm sure we can come up with a couple of ideas on that front. And there very well may be some simplistic things that can be done that aren't tied to a building automation system, that wouldn't necessarily break the bank.
Perfect.
Candace, can you also send us who you talked to or called? So
Yeah. Good point.
and it
Yeah.
I'll see if
eliminating
Randy
those?
remembers.
Okay.
I want to say Johnson Controls was one of them. And then there were just I think some smaller, but Johnson Controls was the big one. I'll see if
Okay.
Randy remembers the others.
They did the school and the hospital.
Yeah, and that's why we thought out of anyone, they would be the people and they recommended someone else, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head, and Randy reached out to them and they didn't have the skill set to do it either.
Mr. Carroll.
Someone can figure it out. But that's the boiler. It sounds like the others, we just turn the thermostat down on the various furnaces and things.
Oh, maybe it was Precision Controls. Josh just texted me. I think that's who it was, Precision Controls.
Not Johnson Controls.
No,
Precision
I think
is
we
someone
did
that we've used
Precision.
for years.
We've used Precision. They couldn't do it. Then we called Johnson. Yes. So yes,
Okay.
those are 2 of them.
Did you guys hear Steve?
Yeah. Hey,
I believe so. He had
Figure that
said
out. You guys will find them or we'll get it figured out, but I want to make sure I understand on all the rest of the buildings. It sounds like if we just turn the thermostat down, I'm trying to get a feel for how much money we're gonna end up roughly that we need to fund for utility costs.
Well, that's really interesting because last year, over the winter months, it was $13,000 to $15,000 a month, overall utility cost. And that depended on how cold it got, of course, and that was the inability to control the science building thoroughly. But the science building too, the one thing I keep thinking about is that has servers in it. And so I don't think that one, as long as those servers are in there, unless we can do something else to tie that out to the other buildings, that has to be kept at a specific temperature. But it was between $13,000 and $15,000 a month.
Was that keeping the other buildings besides the science building and Melville Hall at just above, at freezing, or was that at an
Just
ambient?
above, it was pretty cold. It wasn't like when you walked in there, you could see your breath, but it was at least running so that things wouldn't freeze, so that things wouldn't, Yep. And remember now too, we have people in Melville. There were people in Melville last year. There continue to be people in Melville now, so.
They mentioned that not science building, the art building would be really easy to mothball. Is that one where our chances of it being damaged would be pretty minimal if we did that?
So that building is really probably if we had a list, a prioritization list, top to bottom being the least likely for any level of reuse for the county for a number of factors, both mechanical systems, structural systems, the finishes and what is needed to further enhance the building for reuse in any way or manner. Building B, the arts building, was that one building that just really it's not fit for really any reuse for the county. It has the lowest value of reuse, but it also has the highest cost for what would need to be done to it to get it to even just a manageable level for reuse. And then, by the way, you're reusing a 60-year-old building that just has gotten new things added to it. So
Next gazebo.
But is that the one that you said did not have boilers?
Right.
correct.
Water at all?
Yes. Let's go.
Just the bathroom? Yeah.
So that one, yeah, I think it sounds like that one could be taken down to, and I believe, and I have to refer to Kirk and RD on this, that one is not connected in any way to any of the other buildings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's an independent building, not connected to any of the others, and it really could be fully winterized, i.e. drained, and there would really not be much of a loss if there was any kind of failure over the winter months.
Okay. That one, let's save a little bit.
Now, that being said, there was overall in that building, if we go back with the consideration for agenda item number 7, that building had probably the highest amount of desks, chairs, typical school related items. And that was, let me see, it's not refreshing any of these.
That's the least of our worries.
Kyle, honestly, a lot of the stuff in that building is not reusable. It's very
Okay.
minimal. A lot of the
it would just be the things in the art room was really it. Everything else
and there's
was
not a ton in there.
commodity.
either, but.
And it can be moved to a building that we are.
Yeah, and that would be our only comment, is that, you know, if the decision is to let me go to a different view, because this is having some trouble reloading here. If there is any desire for any of the items in building B, it would be to prioritize moving that into, say, the science building, into one of the classrooms in the science building. And it literally would just be, I think, 1 or 2 classrooms of items. Everything else is far too dated, or far too worn, or just not a real use for anybody.
Projectors, screens, but.
Well, and you can use that philosophy not just for that B building, but you could do that for anything that's in the science building too. Once you have inventory of what's there, you can get it out of that building, and then you could winterize that building as well.
Probably not with the route or servers in there.
Are those county-wide servers?
They're somehow tied into the computers out there. I'd have to talk to Barb to figure it
Okay.
out for sure, but I know they had unplugged it and Randy had to go back and plug them back in, because whoops, stuff didn't work anymore.
Okay.
So, I can talk to Barb about that piece.
All right, yeah. Disregard what I just said about
Yeah,
the science
so-
building then.
So then it would seem like building A, yep, A being the science building. This one really would need to stay up and operational, albeit at a minimized thermal set point. Yep.
Yep.
Just due to the criticality of equipment in that building. If we look at building B, the arts and education building, this
Can I
one,
pause you there for a quick second, Kyle?
yeah, you certainly can.
If we back up to the science building, you had mentioned that the science building was the biggest cost from a utility standpoint over last winter. And I guess the one question that I would have on that, so there are some large exhaust fans on the roof. If those exhaust fans are running throughout the winter, that will definitely have an impact, a negative impact on the cost to operate that building, because now we're bringing in more fresh air into the building because the exhaust fans are running. As long as those fans stay off, we can minimize the amount of fresh air that goes to that building. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, and that's something I'd have to ask Randy if those were running.
I assume those would be connected with the chemistry lab, wouldn't they? I don't think they'd be running with our.
I don't know. It always does sound pretty noisy when you walk in
Might
there.
be bringing fresh air into the whole
Oh my
building.
gosh.
And Kirk, would that be the exhaust fans for all of those fume hoods?
Yeah, those would be the biggest ones that would have an impact on that. If there were a couple smaller exhaust fans up there, serving bathrooms and things like that, and there may be some general exhaust. But as long as those chemistry lab exhaust fans don't run, that'll save you on utility costs, both on the electrical to operate those fans and on the decreased need for fresh air to make up the air that's being exhausted out of the building.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, because those fume hoods are basically like just keeping a couple of windows open or cracked open at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, go ahead.
I'm still trying to get a feel for what we think our ongoing costs will be this winter if we go with this route of just turning things down. And maybe tweaking the science building, but are you saying we already did that last winter?
Yeah, we did. We turned them down last winter. But again, remember, when we get these built, it's 3 buildings and 3 buildings. It's not necessarily broken out. And that's one of the things we realized too. So it's very difficult to determine. I mean, you can sort of see what is in one building, but not really. And so You know, but yes, I mean, if we took the classroom building all the way down, if we took the theater all the way down, you know, just to barely above freezing, if we could regulate the science building better, I think that would go a long way. You know, the library is another one. I don't see, there's really no benefit. We know we're not gonna use that building. We would have to do significant, you know, remodel to that. So there again, that one could really be taken down to bare bones. And then the gym, obviously, we have some question about whether or not the school district can use that. There's a whole other piece there. And with that wood floor, we're not gonna wanna do anything to damage that. And then Melville Hall, we have people. So,
Right, right. I'm just saying, it'd be nice if we could not have to mess with flushing and worry about this in a trap or something, if it doesn't cost too much money, just throttle everything down.
well, I don't think it's gonna cost more than it cost last year. So that's one good
Keeping
thing.
in mind the buildings have very poor windows and all this stuff that we
Yeah.
talked about before that are going to make them expensive to heat even to 50 degrees if it's 20 below outside. Not saying that we should, you know, mothball them all.
No.
But just a statement of fact.
That's a good point, Dave. I mean, it's one of those things when, you know, you have a much thicker insulated puffy jacket on, it's easier to maintain that temperature. But when you have a thinner shell on, like these buildings do, setting it at that lower temperature, those systems are going to be running a lot more just because it's losing a lot more at a quicker rate. And it's a very accurate observation with that.
So can we find a way to put a puffy jacket on?
Yeah, right.
I'll see.
The architectural puffer coat.
Can we just go ahead with doing those two and then see how our cost sheet
Well, I
and everything else?
Yeah, we
I
can.
mean, because we're gonna have a month.
Just having some board discussion here, and that may be something we want to take to the full board too, because if we do take a building down to ambient temperature, we're pretty much writing off that building.
Yeah.
And that would be a decision that, no, we're not going to do anything with it. We're basically admitting we're going to demolish it. And
Well-
that's probably a decision that should be a full board decision.
I would agree with you, but what if that, okay, so we're saying can't do that to the gymnasium or Melville Hall or the science building and probably not the Copper Top, right?
B's the only one I've heard so far.
Well, C, we're saying
C.
C.
B and
The library.
library.
Yep, yeah.
What
those
about
two
the
for
Copper
sure.
Top? I
Well,
mean,
the
it's got
pianos,
the pianos in it at the moment.
if we moved the pianos out, the pianos and any of the instruments, I think beyond that, we would be fine, because
What
it's
about
just
the
tables,
kitchen stuff?
chairs. Ugh, that's true, the
I'm
kitchen,
thinking we probably shouldn't immediately with that.
that's true.
So my recommendation then for the board would be those two other buildings and see how our costs are after, you know what I mean? Like, because at that point, we're hoping to have the rest of the input from them.
Yep.
We're hoping that we can get through inventory and maybe auctioning some things. I think we'd be at a better place to make a decision on the fate of some of those others by that point.
Yeah. And the highway department to back a dump truck up to the classroom building and just chuck all the,
That's already happened.
well, they've taken out all the crap already.
No, that's what people are saying happens, not what's happening.
We have
No,
not,
it
we
hasn't happened.
officially have not done that.
No,
No.
no.
Where
Just
do the
for-
buildings sit at now?
Sorry?
Where do the buildings sit at now?
I'd have to ask, I'd have to ask Randy. I haven't been out there recently to see what he's got them set at.
So
Other than the science building, do we have any control issues with the other buildings?
Not that I am aware of, we do not have any other issues. The only one that I am aware of is that science building, computer board, whatever.
So I just propose that we move that recommendation on to the board, that we would bring B and C, for lack of a better term, mothball, ambient temperature, and then
Probably take all the buildings to low setting, as best we can for now, till we get them emptied, and then
And then address- relook at it again later. I mean, once we have some more things done.
okay. Do we have any other questions for our experts we have online?
Well, how much does it cost to do that to our water pipes and everything? Yeah,
Blow them out?
yeah.
No, no idea.
Labor and compressor, but Gentlemen, the boiler in the gymnasium, does that heat one other building? The one that's in the.
Can you repeat that? It was hard to hear what you were saying. There was a lot of background noise at the time. Sorry.
The boiler that's connected to the gymnasium and the maintenance room,
Yeah.
rumor was originally that heated one other building, underground piping. Yes or no?
There was, when we were on site, there was nothing that indicated that it served any other building.
Okay,
I do think there is some electrical that is fed from the gymnasium building to a couple others. I'd have to verify that with our electrical engineer, but I think there might be some of that going on the electrical side. But yeah, from a plumbing and HVAC side, all the buildings are independent to themselves.
perfect. Yeah, I know there's tunnels and stuff where they have run a lot of the electrical.
If we do look at mothballing a building or two, do we have any electrical concerns with that building if we shut off all the heat and we turn off all the plumbing?
I talked with Steve about that a little bit to get his thoughts. He couldn't think of anything off the top of his head when I spoken with him earlier today that would be of a concern. It's just the.
Would there be any concern about like a fire detection system or something like that malfunctioning if it got to ambient temperature or?
I did not ask that specific question. That's a good one. I will follow up with Steve and find out if there are any concerns on that side and get back to you guys on that.
I mean, if we shut off the water, does that shut that off too, so that we're not worried about pipes bursting and water?
Are there sprinkler systems in any of those buildings?
No,
Oh,
no, so you're safe there. That,
Okay, good. We were just asking about that.
yeah,
So-
we'll call that a hypothetical dry system.
I would say we're also gonna be checking though on the vent issue with the science building.
Yeah, when Randy gets back, I will go out there. We will, look at those vents, and then I will,
The servers.
and I'll talk to Barb about the servers. And then also see kind of what temperature we're holding at right now.
Sounds good.
Okay, any other questions for our panel online? All right, thank you so much for the information tonight. I'm sure we will have many more conversations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So talked about bringing that recommendation to the full board. I think we should do that at our November meeting. Give them an update on what we've been talking about so far, that we're looking at potentially mothballing the classroom and the library, keeping the others at hold temperature so they don't freeze and get damaged. Of course, once we get stuff out of those buildings, we'd have to keep them at hold temperature till we get stuff out of them. And then figuring out,
You blow the blinds down, you have to keep that whole.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't even take that step till we got all the stuff out.
If that agenda is not 42 points, I think that would be also a great time to update them on that. We need to discuss the scope of this,
Yes.
scope and makeup.
I think that would be appropriate as well.
We'll have to get.
I would hope our November agenda wouldn't be that long because typically we haven't had a November.
And Dave,
Yes.
still on. If you need any assistance from our team as part of that, just please let us know and we can make ourselves available for that if needed.
Have them on board for our next meeting, talking about the strategic planning part of this, space needs part.
We have not scheduled that yet. We haven't
Okay.
scheduled the next meeting.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know if we want to talk about that while Kyle is still with us.
Oh, Kyle, did you
Yeah.
want to talk about potential for next meeting where you can talk about the space needs?
Yes.
Is asking for that.
Yep, we still
That is
have,
next on our agenda is future meeting date, so.
sure. We still have Corey and Brian on the call. So if you have any questions, we would be able to help give you further information on that.
In just initial discussions, the clerk and I were kind of ballparking like 2 weeks from today as a potential to have a space needs discussion. We wanted to separate that from the, figuring out what we're doing today stuff.
Sorry, what was that?
2 weeks from today.
20th?
20.
I think so.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're asking me to do math. It's been a Would that work for your folks, Kyle?
And that would be at the same time at 5 o'clock?
Same time? Yep. And virtual availability?
Yes. Currently, we are showing that as being, we would be available for that.
Yes, I'm available.
Awesome.
Okay.
Want to go with that?
And I'll
Okay.
tell all department heads that if they want to hear what's presented, they can log on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is our next meeting date.
I want a question for Kyle, Steve Williamson.
Yep.
Looking for, where would we find the maps that would identify the water shutoff?
Yes, we can get those shared with you. I will get those to Candace and then you will have those documents.
Perfect, because I would like to get out there and get them marked before snow flies, which could happen any day, but shouldn't.
Okay.
Hey, we're in Wisconsin. We're on borrowed time already.
Exactly.
Mr. Carroll, one more.
Kyle, the information you shared at our last meeting showing the condition of all the different buildings,
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yep.
More detail.
with all the,
Oh, yeah.
the pie charts.
Yes.
Could we get a copy of that?
That is, yes. So that would be, we would be sharing that. It's an online link that we can share with Candace, and she would then be able to go on there with you in a live fashion to go through that with any of that. So we can share that with you. We'll share that with Candace. We'll send that link over to her to give her that availability, that access.
So are those files that she can see and download them so we can look at them, or we have to be with them to see her?
With that, it would be, it would just have the ability to view it, not download, but anything that you see in there, we can create a custom report for you. And I think what might be the best way to move forward, and this is sort of one of the benefits with I'll say benefits and more, yeah, it's a benefit. Or is it a feature, however that joke is made. But the benefit of it is we can custom create reports for each individual building, which I think would be our recommendation, just so you have an actual document for each building, but then also have an executive summary that we can put together for the campus alone. So that can just be its own parceled item that can be there, just executive level, doesn't get into a lot of detail. We can have another report that has all of the granular detail with that. And then we can have a whole separate set of reports that are there for one set for the HHS building, and then one for what we'll call the courthouse block complex of buildings as well.
And will those be available to the board members here or just to Candace?
Those, when we create those reports, those would be as PDFs, and then you would have access to printing those off and sharing that with board and public with that.
Sounds awesome.
Can we have that before the next meeting?
Before the 20th meeting or the next board meeting?
See, next board meeting is what date, Derek?
19th.
Yeah, the 19th. Yeah, the 19th is our next board meeting, so we're right before the 20th. So
we can target that. Yes.
That would be awesome, because that would help us in sharing information with our whole board. So
Okay.
Well, even if it's just the campus reports.
Yeah.
I mean, the other two can hold, I mean,
Yeah.
but I.
prioritize the campus part.
Okay. We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. So we have our next
Thank
meeting date picked out. Do we have any correspondence, which is item 10 under due? Nothing. All right. We have the meeting picked out, future agenda items for that meeting, besides our space needs that we're going to start talking about update on what we might learn from any local auctioneers on inventory,
On that, and then I can get answers from Randy or ask Randy to be here
talk about
to-
these questions
to
that
talk
we've had
about these
about.
questions for the winterization too. I can start working on that right away though.
And I'm sure Venture will connect us with a resource. They'll have the control system all fixed in the science building.
We'll definitely work on that.
Yes.
Nothing like high expectations, right? Any other future agenda items anybody would like to? Not, then a motion to adjourn would be in order. Motion by Glassburner, second by Frank to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Corey, you came
Thank
back
you.
from Italy, huh?
I made it.
I can't wait to hear about it.
Sounds good. We'll have to touch base and I'll
Yes.
tell you all about it.
Perfect.
Have a good night.